All right, so this video I'm going to share with you kind of an alternative take on the whole weight loss and fat and dieting subject. And it's alternative because I'm going to be speaking largely from the perspective of Chinese medicine, ancient Chinese philosophy, as well as my own personal experience with gaining 40 or 50 pounds, losing 40 or 50 pounds, as well as working with people and doing coaching and consulting. And the first thing we really need to understand is that most of the time, what we understand as fat or weight gain is not necessarily fat or weight gain. Because we are not understanding the underlying physiological process, we're usually missing the point. We're missing the point because we're thinking in things in terms of very limited, largely unproven, and actually largely disproven kinds of philosophies and ideas. Meaning, hopefully at this point in human history, we can understand that the modern dietary paradigm is actually completely I won't say completely, but I'll say largely incorrect. Meaning the calories in, calorie out model has been debunked a lot of times. And then the modern paradigm can never make up its mind about what's healthy and what's not healthy. You know, these people talk forever about how, oh, fat's so bad for you. And then we have this plague of low fat everything. And then a year or so ago, on the cover of Time magazine, it's like, oh, actually, wait, damn, we were wrong. Whoops, sorry. But we haven't really caught up with our paradigm because the way we understand food, the way we understand the body, believe it or not, is not actually that correct, not actually that accurate, and not actually that helpful, and largely has very little to do with our actual experience as human beings. So if we think of food, we think of our body in these limited, dehumanized, extremely abstract terms, then it's no wonder we're going to have problems. We're going to have issues because the way we are approaching a situation, the way we are approaching life and relating to our experience is actually at odds with our actual experience. Thus, it's pretty unlikely that we're actually going to achieve much success. So let me be a bit more specific. A lot of the time what people think of as fat or weight gain is not necessarily fat or weight gain, but is actually what we might call damp. In Chinese medicine, it's termed as damp. What does that mean? Kind of a weird terminology. Well, you can also look at it as sort of stagnation, or more specifically, sort of undigested, unprocessed material that the body is sort of just putting places. And usually sort of toxic material that accumulates because our systems of elimination and digestion are not actually really functioning very well. And I'll get to why that is in just a second. And there's actually quite a few different potential reasons why that could be happening, but a lot of it has to do with the way in which we understand food and how that actually disconnects us from our actual experience. So, you know, people think this fatty, liquidy stuff that accumulates is actually, it's like fat or it's like weight gain, but it's usually just toxic, sort of jello-like material that the body is like, I don't really know what this is. For whatever reason, I don't know how to process or digest or eliminate it, so I'm just going to stick it somewhere. And that's usually what the underlying issue is. So then if you look at the common solution, it's often eating, you know, certain diets, which usually what happens is ends up eating a lot of cold food, meaning fruits, vegetables, raw vegetables, a lot of salads, a lot of smoothies, a lot of juices. And generally within those things, people consider that's healthy. I'm going to eat that because it's healthy. You know, I'm going to eat this salad or drink this smoothie because it's healthy and it's going to make me lose weight. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely better than eating garbage, which we need to understand that obviously what we eat is important. Quality is important, yes. And that's all I'll really say about that because those two things are really a huge subject in and of themselves, which I don't really have time or space to get into in this video. So the general point that I'm trying to get at is that what does our experience tell us? Okay, what does cold do to things? Well, if you take water and you make it cold enough, it basically freezes. What happens when you get cold? you tend to tense up and you don't really want to do too much. What happens in the wintertime? Things tend to slow down and kind of go into a dormant state. What happens when people die? They get cold. Okay, so that's what our actual experience is. And I can keep going with loads of other examples that can show us what cold does to things and how that relates to taking us further away from actually being alive. Okay, now what does, warm or heat do to things? Tends to get things moving. If you heat up water enough, it transforms into steam and boils. If you heat it a little bit, then it'll extract and pull things into it. Uh, Lots of other examples. Heat basically transforms and gets things moving. Okay, so then our usual dietary approach tells us that, okay, we need to get things moving because we have this excess weight, but we're going to get things moving by putting a bunch of cold stuff in our system. But our actual experience and most of our life and common sense will tell us that cold doesn't actually do those things. So then does that really equate and transfer over? Now, obviously, if someone just eats garbage, or they don't eat at all, or they have some crazy, unhealthy, imbalanced relationship to food, and then they just start eating like salads and smoothies and that sort of generic food, then yeah, that's probably a step in the right direction. They might see positive results. However, they're going to see some positive results, and they're probably going to see a lot of side effects from that, meaning some things will get better, other things will get worse. They might have superficial results, but their actual organ health, the actual underlying physiological or energetic process that's having to do with digestion and elimination, is actually going in the other direction. So their ability to absorb nutrients is probably going down. Their ability to actually process food is going down. So they're kind of digging themselves deeper in a hole because they're focused on superficial short-term gains, meaning like some sort of physiological thing. And especially if you take that and combine it with, excess exercise and, beating yourself up physically to look a certain way, yeah, you might manifest results because the body will adapt and respond to whatever you do, however you live. If you just want to eat cardboard and sit on the couch, it's not really that sustainable or healthy, but you can physiologically do it if you so choose. And that will prove and provide and result in certain things. So basically what ends up happening is you have this deficiency, and then we go to an excess to try to correct the deficiency, and that takes us into a larger scope of deficiency. And then basically because we become so narrow-minded in thinking, well, I was this, and that made me unhealthy, but now I'm this, so this is the only thing I can do to make me healthy, we end up becoming actually sicker because the way in which we approached and viewed the situation was extremely limited. The way in which we viewed ourselves was extremely limited, and the way in which we were relating to ourselves in the world was actually in contradiction with what our actual experience and common sense could be telling us, thus not really ever addressing the real root cause. And this is often why, if the whole thing about weight loss and dieting is it's usually a bit of a circle, it's usually a bit of a yo-yo, and very rarely is it kind of you get on the ride and then you get off and you're done and you go on with your life. It usually becomes a huge piece of someone's identity, becomes something they really identify with and become fixated with, and they love it because they have this success story, but then they're also really afraid of like relapsing or going back and have to live their life within a very narrow-minded thing and identify with their disease, but just the other side of it, which is, again, not really addressing the real underlying cause, which would basically, in the paradigm of which I'm speaking from, basically be our earth element, our sense of being centered and rooted. So aside from basically most of weight loss and dieting having nothing to do with the generic model of which we've been conditioned to believe, and then that weight loss has largely not a lot to do with the whole calorie in, calorie out thing, and actually that's been disproven by a lot of different people. If you don't believe me, I highly encourage you to do some research, and please get your paradigm and approach to the world a little bit more up to date, because I really would not rely on people who People who send out warnings to nutrition bar companies telling them that their food bars are unsafe because they contain too much fat. Even though the fat is from like nuts and seeds, like, oh, it's fat. You can only have so much. It's just like fat and salt are demonized, but it's like, wait a minute. Let me think about this. So our body is made up of a lot of fat, like our nervous system. So many important physiological functions are contingent upon fat. Makes sense. That would be evil. Salt, potassium, and sodium. Kind of important balance within our body. And salt, potassium, sort of important for doing things in the body. Oh yeah, it would make sense that salt's evil too, so we shouldn't have that. Let's not even consider the fact that perhaps just our understanding is incorrect, and fat is actually essential and useful and natural part of our diet, but it maybe not hydrogenated soy, whatever weird chemical things that were made up in the last 50 years. Maybe that's not actually fat. Maybe that's not actually food. Salt. Maybe this crazy shit that's cooked up in a lab or cooked in a processing facility similar to the process that's used to make cocaine. Maybe that's actually not what salt actually is. Maybe there's more natural forms. Yes, in small, moderate amounts relative to what a person needs. Yeah, it might actually be essential and might actually be helpful considering how important it is for our actual normal physiological functioning. But let's not ask those questions because clearly our paradigm is correct. So obviously it's producing the results that we want, but wait, it isn't. So then obviously the problem is these things that we need to demonize. Oh wait, actually it's not the things, it's actually our paradigm. Oh wait, that sounds just like Christianity. Let's not look at ourselves. Let's not investigate our own approach. Let's just blame everything on Satan or blame everything on women or blame everything on gays or blame everything on these groups. And it's their fault that the world's fucked up. But let's not look at ourselves. No, let's not investigate our own paradigm that it could actually be largely incorrect and why we're in the situation that we're in. Anywho, just a little side tangent to see how these things connect and relate if you're so interested in these things. So getting back more to the point in talking about the earth element and our sense of being rooted, this is something that really no one ever talks about and a bit more, I guess we could make it a bit more relevant to women since stereotypically they're a bit more emotionally attuned, whereas men tend to be a bit more mental, logical, women tend to be a bit more emotional. And then from an energetic perspective, our systems work a bit differently. Energy is moving a little bit differently in some different ways. So yes, we're very similar, and also we are actually different in some ways as well. So women can really exhaust themselves, deplete themselves, and balance themselves emotionally. And no one ever talks to a woman about, hey, have you ever considered just like actually working on being more centered, being more rooted, being more even keel, and not just being blown, you know, and sort of wavered by the external world, or wavered by situations, or wavered by a chemical emotional wave that's running through you. Does anyone ever consider that? Has anyone also ever considered that perhaps doing that could actually strengthen and nurture essential parts of your psyche, thus improving your digestion, thus improving your ability to have healthier boundaries, the ability to relate more effectively, the ability to feel more rooted and strong within yourself? But no one ever says that because it's all about food, or it's all about exercise, or it's all about don't eat this but eat that, or just love yourself, or just all these things which have a place but actually still don't address the root cause. Because it's not actually understanding what the body is, how the body functions, and what our actual experience is. So the same is also can be true for men, it can be true for any human being, but it's also, because we're talking about weight loss and dieting, the majority of those people tend to be women. So that seems like a relevant thing. We're talking about earth element, we're talking about our sense of being centered and rooted. And the thing is that most of us have never even felt that. We don't even know what that is because we're so used to being outside directed, or we're so used to giving our energy to everything else, or worse off, there's huge parts of our psyche, huge parts of ourself that we won't even look at, we can't even see, we can't even relate to, because we've built up all these protective mechanisms around it. So we can only relate to people and things and situations and ourselves in extremely superficial and limited ways. And if something tries to approach that and go a little bit deeper, we either deflect it by being a victim or trying to be funny or trying to manipulate someone or be emotionally vindictive or demonizing them or villainizing them or trying to save them or help them or fix them. All of these things are built around us and actually keeping us from actually entering into our own experience and getting in touch with who and what we actually are and how we're actually showing up and relating to the world. Which if we're actually not able to show up and do these things in the world, then it's probably going to be reflected in our body because it's actually the same thing. So our body's going to be taking in things and being like, I don't really know what's what and what's me. I don't know what's good, what's bad, what's I need to eliminate. You, as this psyche, as this person showing up in the world, you're unwilling to digest, process, and eliminate things. You're unwilling to draw healthy boundaries. You're unwilling to basically get in touch with who and what you actually are. So your body's just like, yeah, I'm not really going to get in touch with who and what this food actually is, so fuck it. Because all you think food is just this amount of calories or this amount of nutrient or this amount of this. It just becomes a bit of a clusterfuck. And, obviously I get that I'm the crazy one. Given that I've produced results in my life, I've produced results in other people's lives working with them. But yet here we are talking about this paradigm which tends to not really produce real results, does it? For example, people talk about, osteoporosis is all about calcium. So then for how many years have we had calcium fortified everything? Has osteoporosis gone down? Actually, it's gone up. Crazy. Oh wait, but it's not about calcium, it's about calcium and magnesium. Okay. How long have we had that shit supplementing? A while. Has it helped? No. Interesting. But yeah, let's not question the paradigm. Let's not get in touch with that because that's bad, that's evil. It's just all about finding the right product to buy, the right supplement, the right diet, the right exercise program. Just getting on that and then everything will be fine. Doesn't have anything to do with me. Doesn't have anything to do with how I actually relate and show up in the world. It just has to do with all of these things out here in the world. Exactly. Right. Okay. I'm the crazy one. So anyways, rants and tangents aside, hopefully it's given some big broad strokes of things to look at, things to get in touch with, things to reflect upon within this controversial and huge subject of weight loss and dieting. And I'll be more clear and sum up what I said is pretty much the majority of everyone that's doing things in this field and saying things is incorrect and will only produce short-term results and not actually ever address the real root cause, thus keeping everyone on the hamster wheel, on the merry-go-round of whatever new trends and fads and whatever come out of the industry, which is great from a business perspective, not necessarily that great from actually healing or trying to help people. Which is a bit more what I'm interested in is actually that, helping people address the underlying cause, the underlying issues. So there's that, but there also could be a lot of other functions depending on the particular person and situation, such as not being honest with yourself and other people, not actually speaking your truth, not actually showing up authentically in the world, and choosing to repress yourself and be someone other than what you are, which, to be quite honest, is extremely common in our world today and is often extremely more common with women. And I could be largely incorrect with that, but I've just related to women more deeply and intimately than I have with men through my life. I guess being a straight man, dating a lot of women in my life. So a bit more experience, I should say, into going deep into the psyche. But I'm also a guy, and I've also had a lot of guy friends who've gone deep in the male psyche as well. But it's just in a different way. I don't know. I just said, yeah. So it just tends to be a bit more common where it's like women are conditioned to be all of these things and not allowed to be other things because it's selfish or it's mean or you have to be a caretaker, you have to give and show up and do all these things for other people and, put on the happy face and be the whatever that everyone tells you have to be. And that just tends to not make people very healthy or happy, especially when it's been drilled into your psyche since you were a little kid. And then you have other women around you who have had that drilled into their psyche, so they unload their shit onto you, and it just becomes another layer of just insecurity and basically an underlying fear that your worth is your image, your worth is what you look like, and if you don't look a certain way, then no one will love you, no one will want you. Which is interesting because we have modern feminism, which is like, yeah, I'm not property, you can't objectify me, but my psyche is still conditioned to operate within that construct of like, my worth is this, so I have to be this so I can get this, which is one side, but then the flip side is just being angry and going to the other extreme and saying, oh, fuck you, I don't have to do this, my worth is not ABC, and being sort of angry and pointing the finger, but that's, again, not really addressing the root cause. It's still just operating within the same limited construct and paradigm and pointing the fingers at people and being angry and being hurt and being upset, instead of actually just digesting, processing, growing, eliminating, and moving on with our lives, and actually realizing that whatever power or value we have is whatever we give to ourselves, which isn't necessarily contingent upon anything. It's not necessarily contingent upon self-love, because self-love is sometimes not very pretty. Self-love is not positive, because in case you didn't know this, life is two things. It's black and white. It's two sides. So you got to be willing to be negative and sort of sometimes to be positive. And if that is perhaps more of a common thread across humanity, then perhaps that's more authentic, more honest, more relatable. So perhaps it's better to get in touch with that rather than layering on more shoulds, musts, and mustn'ts, and really just reinforcing the same paradigm that we're trying to get rid of in the first place. Who knew? So anyways, hopefully something in this rant has been helpful and inspirational. And yeah, if you have any questions, comments, post them below, and I'll talk to you soon.